Hey, welcome back to Simple C10, and on today's episode I'm going to show you step by step how to make these cool wood blinds for the back of your C10. So if you've been following me for a couple years, you probably remember me installing these wood blinds in the back of Crockett. I really love how they turned out. I did some woodworking on the side at the time, so I built these. They were super easy to build, and a couple people reached out and asked me to build them some at that time, and I did. Recently I put these wood blinds back up on my website and available. I've sold a few sets since then, but I thought, hey, how cool would it be for me to just do a video and show you how to do that yourself? They're still going to be available on the website, so if you don't feel like doing it yourself, go to SIMPLE.SHADES. Like I mentioned, these wood blinds are very easy to build. I'm going to walk step by step today on how to build them. And really you only need some basic tools. Hey, before we get started today, I just wanted to ask a favor of you. If any of my videos have been helpful in the past, hit the like button right now and make sure to subscribe. That helps me out a ton. It's an easy way for you to support me and to continue to make these videos. So thank you to everybody that has supported me in the past. You guys are the ones that encourage me to continue to make these videos. So today, this is all about you, teaching you how to build these blinds to save you a few dollars. So I hope to see many sets online. Tag me in the photos, but let's get started. So some of the things that you're gonna need to build these wood blinds. First, you're gonna need to go to Lowe's and get a 1x2 6-foot piece of oak. You always wanna go with oak because these are gonna have a lot of sun shining on them, and you wanna make sure it's a hard wood. Lowe's offers these 1/4 inch by 2 inch slats, and these are 4 feet long, so these are plenty long enough to go in a small back window. I don't have the size for big back window yet. That's why they're unavailable on the website, because it's a longer slat and they don't offer those. So a 1x2 piece of oak, you get the oak slats, and that's all the wood that you're gonna need. And you're probably wondering, so how do these things install? To install them, I screw in these mirror attachments, and these will slide in and out of your rubber gaskets on the back of your truck, and I'll show you how to do those later. Some super glue, so whenever we cut the slats into the wood, we will put a drop of super glue before we slide the wood in there. You could use wood glue. I like to use super glue because one small dot will hold these slats in place, and you can easily pop them out of place if you need to remove them at any time. You'll need some stain. I like the Minwax. I'm going to use dark walnut today. I had some left over, and then I like this wiping stain. This is a clear satin poly wipe, so I can just wipe everything down, let it dry for a day, and you're good to go. A little foam brush, or you could just use a rag or any kind of cloth material you would have laying around that won't leave residue. This is some 220 paper. I like my final sanding to be with 220 to make everything smooth. If you have a sander like this works great for just smoothing out some of your cuts, but you don't have to have the sander. Besides the things I have here, you'll also need a drill. That way you can pre-drill these holes to not crack the wood, and you'll need a miter saw to make your cuts. I'm going to give you exact measurements for a 60 to 66 small back window. It should be the same for a 67 to 72 as well. But these are the measurements that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to show you how I measure. That way, if you're not doing a C10, you can make these blinds for any style truck as long as you have the right measurements, and as long as these little clips will go into the rubber seal of your window. If the rubber seal won't work, then you'll have to find another way to attach these onto your truck. We're going to screw these little brackets onto the actual blinds itself, and these are going to slide into the rubber just like this, and that's what's going to hold it in place. When we get these screwed onto the wood, we'll turn the blind sideways and then twist it in, and it's going to lock into those rubber seals. The rubber seals really hold these well. So what I like to do is go ahead and install these into the rubber on the top and bottom, and then we can measure from the top of here to the bottom of here to know how tall to make our blinds, because we don't want to make the blinds smaller than the bracket is, because then you'll see the bracket on the blind. One thing I love about this design is it's not going to damage anything in your truck. You're not going to have to drill holes in the cab or do anything like that. You're just going to slide these brackets in between the rubber seal and the window. And I'll show you how to do that now. And we do this to make sure we get the correct measurement. Just like that. That right there. We're going to measure from the top to the bottom. It's 12 inches. I like to add a 1/2 of an inch and split the difference. So we're going to do 12 and a half. That way it gives us a little of adjustment. So 12 and a half on these. We'll put it all the way up here to the bottom to give us some adjustment into the brackets. You can go ahead and pull these out, and we'll install these later after we have the wood stain. So I'm going to try to be as detailed as possible when it comes to how I mark these, because it can get a little complicated. What we know we want this full back of the brace to be 12 and a half. So I went ahead and marked 12 and a half. I like for the top and bottom to have a little bit of an angle in it. That way it's not all squared off. So I'm going to mark 12 on the front. And when we go to the miter saw, we know that we'll cut that angle. And on the front, I want to go down and mark a 1/2 like that. And that will give us this cut. I'll go ahead and draw it on there just to give you a visual. It's going to give us that cut on the top and bottom. That way there's a little bit of an angle to it. Now we'll go ahead and mark this one the top, so we know all of our angles we want to come down when we're cutting into this brace. Here's where we're going to mark for the slats, and we're going to go every 2 inches. So we'll make a mark at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's going to give us 5 slats that are going to go down the window. And what we'll do whenever we go over to the miter saw, we're going to tilt the miter saw at a certain angle, and we'll decide that angle when we get there. But we'll flip the wood over like this, and then we'll cut that angle with the miter saw into every one of those holes. So what I like to do is just continue on that mark onto the top, just like this. That way when we get to the miter saw, we'll know where to cut. And that's pretty much it. Whatever angle that we're going to cut this at, we'll cut the remainder of these. And whenever we cut, we're not going to cut all the way. We're going to have a stop. That way it won't cut all the way through the wood. You don't want to cut it too far down where it makes it weak. Just enough that you can slide the slat in there and it can sit firmly. Now it's time to cut our wood. If you're not familiar with the miter saws have a couple of different adjustments depending on which one you have. Most miter saws will have this style adjustment, but some of them have this angle adjustment. So depending on what miter saw you have and what adjustments it has on it will depend on how your setup will look like on this. For mine, I like to draw the line of the angle, and then what I'll do is loosen up the back and forth like this right here where I can angle it, and then I will kind of set up the angle for the same way that I've drawn that angle to get it close. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get it very close, about right there. On mine, that is a 25-degree angle, and that is the angle that we want. And what I like to do is not cut off all my extra piece, because this is the piece that I can hold on to. So I will start at the other end like this and just go ahead and cut off a little of that end, then flip it back over. That way I have something to hold on to here, and then I will cut all the slats first, and my last cut will be cutting the piece separate. Because if you cut this one first and you've got this tiny piece to try to cut, it puts your finger so close to the saw, I don't feel comfortable there. You could get some brackets or something to clamp it down, but you're gonna have to move this to cut all the different things, and I'd much rather be holding on to it down here and cutting instead of right up against it. So that's just my safety tip for the day. You can see that just kind of makes the ends look better than being squared off when you install it onto the truck. Now we're going to flip this back over. And this is where your miter saw may have a adjustment where it will keep it from cutting all the way through. Because what we want the miter saw to cut at this angle, but not cut all the way through the wood, just to create a slat for those blinds to sit in. So what I want to do is take this other end of the wood and I'm going to use it as a test piece. Usually miter saws will have a depth guide on them, so if you flip this down, you can see that that's not allowing the saw to go all the way through. And I'm hoping that's the same setting that I had it set on last time. I'm going to test it right here just to show you, and I just want to test the very edge of it, that way I don't waste a lot of wood. And as you can see, that's exactly what we want right there. Just use a sacrificial piece of wood to be able to cut all the way through the wood here. So I tape these all together to make sure that both sides are exactly the same when I make my cuts. I'm going to measure from here 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then begin to make my slat cuts. You'll see me whenever I make this cut, I'll make 2 passes. I'll make a cut, then I'll make a cut again to go down because the thickness of this wood is thicker than the saw blade. So I need to make 2 passes on each cut. Now that we have this piece done, the next step is to mark where these little brackets go. And if you'll remember, this is how they sit on there. Whenever we had these mocked up to the windows, from bottom to bottom was 12 inches after they were installed. And that's almost exactly where they're at right now. And there's some adjustment in the brackets, so don't feel like you have to get them perfect. We just want these to be 12 inches from bottom to bottom, and I like to put the screw hole about right in the middle. That way we can adjust back and forth. Worst case scenario, if you're doing this and it doesn't install correctly, you just drill another hole and move it. No big deal. But I'm going to go ahead and measure these exactly at 12. I did go in the truck and measure rubber to rubber on the inside, and it was 9 inches, so I know that's where the rubber is going to be. And right now, from here to here is 9, so I know that's going to fit snug. The top to bottom is 12, which is perfect, and in the middle is 9, and that's where we want. Another adjustment factor too, whenever you're going to install these little metal brackets, you can bend in if you want a tighter fit like this, or you can just leave them the way that they are. I plan to leave them the way they are. I think they fit great like that. But there is adjustment in the clips, up and down, side to side. So now I'm going to double check my measurement. I'm going to mark the 4 holes, and I'm going to use a drill bit to just make a pilot hole. Then I'm going to screw these in and then go test them on the truck. But here's how you install them. You just turn this sideways and you're just gonna slide them into the rubber gaskets, just like that right there. But see how they're just barely in the rubber gaskets? We're gonna wanna unscrew them and make them a little bit wider. That way they'll go further into the rubber gasket. I'm gonna test this other one really quickly. Yep, they both just need adjusted out just a little bit further and they should be great. Then we'll test them with the slat. Whenever you're adjusting these wider to make them match up, just make sure to adjust them evenly. If you adjust the top one out a little bit, make sure both tops are adjusted out. That way your slats are going to be level. There's lots of adjustment in these, top and bottom. What I'm going to do, I like to just kind of put them up there and see where they're hanging out. And what I would like to do is bring the bottoms down just a little bit, both bottoms. So I'm gonna loosen up both bottom brackets and I'm just gonna slide them up this way to make it wider. There we go, I've got the bottoms adjusted out, and now I'm gonna do the same thing we just did on the rubber gaskets. Remember, when you're installing these, just be easy at first. You'll feel it kind of lock in when you get it into the rubber gasket, and that's locked in right there. See, that's not going anywhere. And again, like I was saying, you can adjust these metal brackets out or bend them out a little bit further if it's pulling out your rubber gasket. There's adjustment out to get the look that you're wanting. The top is perfect there. I'm going to install the other side and then we'll put a slat up there just to see what it looks like. You can pull out your rubber gasket a little bit, just lock in the bottom, and then the top will slide right in just like that right there. And that's locked in really good. We're gonna just try a slat to see if it slides in, if it looks good. And that's it. Whenever we get ready, have everything stained, we'll put a drop of super glue or wood glue in here, lay this in there, and then let it dry and it'll be locked in. But you could easily remove it if you need to, even with the super glue, by just bending this up and it'll pop it out and slide them out. I've done that a few times with mine. But now, since I have these brackets up here, I want to measure to see how wide I want my slats to be. That's the next step. So I'm going to go 35 inches. That will get me where I cover a lot of the bottom, but it's not sticking too far out at the top. So let's cut all these down to 35 inches, and then we'll stain everything, clear it, and install it back onto the truck. Next, we're just going to screw in the brackets back into the wood now that is cleared. I like to go ahead and get the bottom set in and then move the top, and that's it. It's locked in right there. You can bend these bottom brackets if you need to, if they need bent out or in, but there's a lot of flexibility in them and they hold them really well. After I get that in there, these are about 9 inches from the outside of the window. You can put them anywhere that you want. Once they're in there, now it's time to just slide the slats in. make sure they're level right here. There we go. There's a couple different ways that you can lock these into place. One way is what I'm going to do today, is super glue. So all you have to do once you get them set everywhere you want, just pull them out just a little bit and put a dot of super glue on the very bottom here, just a tiny dot, and then slide that back into place and do it to each one of them. Just pull it out, put a little bit on both sides, slide it in, adjust it to make sure they're still lined up, let it dry for 5 minutes, and you're locked in. That super glue, just a dot of it, holds it just enough where it won't go anywhere. But if you ever want to take this off, all you have to do is kind of bend up on the blind like that right there, and it'll pop it loose and you can take it off. I've done this multiple times. It works great. But hopefully you get it locked in where it goes and you're not taking it out again. But this is what it looks like. This set looks great. This is going to be shipped off to Trey. This is his set. So thank you again, Trey, for purchasing these. I can't wait to see them in your truck. This is a great looking set. Again, you can either do this yourself or you can go to SIMPLE.SHADES.co, go to the wood blinds and purchase a set. I've got them in whatever color that you want.